Software vulnerabilities are common these days, with tens of thousands of them being found every month. Software developers and hackers are in a never-ending race of patching and exploiting these vulnerabilities. One such vulnerability that has surfaced over the internet in the past few days is the Log4J vulnerability, also known as Log4Shell. Internet has flooded with thousands of memes about Log4j, and there's been a lot of talk about it in the tech world. Today I am going to talk about what is Log4j vulnerability and what you can do to protect yourself from a potential exploit. Log4j is a logging software developed by Apache Software Foundation in early 1996. It is used by software developers to log certain events in their Java application, then can be used for troubleshooting and debugging purposes. Log4j vulnerability has impacted over 35,000 Java packages, amounting to over 8% of the Maven central repository. This is very concerning to the governments, businesses, and software industry in general. What is this vulnerability and how it can be exploited by hackers? The vulnerability allows attackers to perform something called as RCE or remote code execution. This is done by exploiting the insecure Java naming directory interface or JNDI lookups feature exposed by the Log4j library. JNDI allows you to store Java objects in a remote location and serialize or stream them to the JVM. JNDI is not a Log4j feature but is a part of the Java platform itself and has been around for years now. The feature is enabled by default and is harmless by itself. However, back in 2013, a change was made to Log4j that allowed you to do JNDI lookups from log messages. Now this is where things start to go wrong. Consider a social media application which lets you search for other users on the platform. Now if you pass this request in the search bar, which is actually a JNDI URL for some malicious code hosted on your server, and if the logger is logging it, then Java is going to recognize it as a JNDI URL and perform a JNDI call to the URL. It is going to connect to your server hosting the malicious code, and your server is going to serialize the malicious code and inject it in the site's JVM. So now the site's JVM has a code that is not a part of the application and it is running the code that you put in there. The JVM is going to run that code and you will have control over everything in that JVM. This is what is called RCE or remote code execution. A hacker can use the vulnerability to steal sensitive data, install ransomware, or even use your system to mine cryptocurrency for themselves. Who knows what? That's why it is so scary. It is almost similar to another vulnerability called SQL injection, wherein it is possible to pass SQL queries and mess with the databases. Another similar vulnerability is the log injection, which allows you to log certain statements by passing them as a search query. Log injection is generally harmless as log messages can be easily identified if they have been injected and no big decisions are made as such by just reading the logs. So how do you protect yourself or your organization from the Log4j vulnerability? The first thing that you can do is to set these two flags which end with trust URL codebase to false. This prevents Java from trusting a code coming from an external URL and thereby blocking it and preventing its execution. The exploit is stopped immediately. There's still more to do to stop the attack completely. Log4j also does environment variable lookups. Most of the servers have secret keys in their environment variables. Even after you turn off code execution from external URLs, if a hacker forms a query like this, it is going to resolve this URL and make a call to your server anyway, even if it is not going to trust whatever it is getting back from it. When the call is made, it is going to resolve this URL and make a call to your server anyway, even if it is not going to trust whatever it is getting back from it. When the call is made, the hacker gets both the access key and the secret key, so the AWS account is now compromised. So if someone is hosting a site on the AWS, they will probably have the access key and secret key set in the environment variables, which can be compromised by this kind of vulnerability. So what's the solution? The simplest way is to upgrade to the newest version of Log4j, that is 2.16. Pretty straightforward. But it can be problematic if you have dependencies which rely on Log4j directly or indirectly. So an alternate way is to patch the class directly. that is to get the newest version of the class for the Log4j release and put it directly in the class path. This makes sense because you can't wait for the publisher of a dependency to patch it before you can release your own version. Sometimes they may not even patch it at all. And finally, if you are using Gradle, you can have dependency constraint to strictly have version 2.16 or above of Log4j. This will prevent the application from using anything below version 2.16, which is vulnerable to exploitation. Patching this vulnerability is extremely important no matter what before a potential hacker can exploit it to hack into your system and cause havoc. The vulnerability has a CVSS, which stands for Common Vulnerability Scoring System score of 10 on 10. That's certainly scary. That's a wrap for this video. Hit the like button if you like this video or dislike it if you don't, and mention video ideas in the comment section below. Thanks for watching and keep coding.